Commander Nara pressed her blue hand against the cold metal wall of the bridge and felt the ship shake around her. The Harmony's Edge was not built for war. It was a science vessel, made for exploring old ruins and studying ancient texts. Now, it sat trapped like a bug in a spider's web, with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. "Status report," she said to her crew, trying to keep her voice calm even though her heart was beating fast. Dr. Kale looked up from his console, his large black eyes wide with fear. "The engines are still damaged from the asteroid field. We have maybe 30% power. The life support systems are working, but we only have about 6 hours of air left." Nara nodded and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, she could see the dark shapes of the Vorthok hunter ships. 15 of them, arranged in a perfect circle around the old Kepler station. Each ship was 3 times the size of her vessel, with thick armor and weapons that could tear through their hull in seconds. "They are waiting for something," said Lieutenant Zara from the communications station. "They could have destroyed us hours ago, but they have not fired a single shot." Nara knew why the Vorthok were waiting. They did not want to destroy the Zelani ship. They wanted to capture it. The Zelani were known across the galaxy as peaceful people who possessed advanced medical knowledge and scientific skills. To the Vorthok, they were valuable slaves. "Commander," called out Engineer Toko from the back of the bridge, "I have been working on the engines for 3 hours. The damage is too great. Even if I had the right parts, it would take days to fix." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the life support systems. Nara looked at her crew of 12. They were all scientists and diplomats, not soldiers. They had come to this remote system to study the ruins on Kepler Station, hoping to learn about the ancient civilization that had built it thousands of years ago. Instead, they had flown into a trap. The Vorthok had been waiting for them. Someone had given them information about the Zelani mission. Now her people would pay the price for trusting the wrong person. "There are other ships out there," said Dr. Kale, pointing to his scanner. "I count at least 8 civilian vessels trapped in the debris field around the station. Families, traders, researchers, all of them caught like we are." Nara felt sick. It was bad enough that her crew was in danger, but innocent civilians were also trapped. She had seen what happened to people the Vorthok captured. They became slaves, forced to work in mines or factories until they died. The lucky ones died quickly. "Can we send a message to the other ships?" she asked. Lieutenant Zara shook her head. "The Vorthok are jamming all normal communications. I can barely pick up their signals and I cannot send anything back to them." On the main screen, Nara watched as small shapes began moving away from the Vorthok ships, boarding pods. The attack was beginning. "They are going for the civilian ships first," said Dr. Kale. 3 pods heading for the transport ship near the station's north dock. Nara felt helpless. She could only watch as the Vorthok boarding pods attached to the civilian ship like parasites. Within minutes, she knew the families inside would be captured and taken aboard the hunter ships. "Commander," said Toko quietly, "we have weapons. Not much, but we have 2 plasma cannons and some defensive missiles." "Against 15 warships?" Nara asked. "We would last maybe 10 seconds. But we could help the civilians escape," Toko said. "If we attack one side of the Vorthok formation, maybe some of the other ships could get away." Nara considered it. The Harmony's Edge would be destroyed, but perhaps they could save some lives. It was better than sitting here waiting to be captured. "No," said Dr. Kale suddenly. "I have a better idea. We send a distress signal." "The Vorthok will hear it," said Lieutenant Zara. "They will know exactly where we are." "They already know where we are," Dr. Kale replied. "But if we send the signal on a low frequency, it will travel much farther. Maybe someone else will hear?" It too, Nara thought about it. The nearest Zelani ships were weeks away. The Galactic Council had no military forces in this sector. But there might be other ships, other races that could help. "What about the humans?" asked Toko. "I heard they have ships in this area sometimes." Dr. Kale made a sound that was almost like a laugh. "Humans? They are still new to space travel." What could they do against a Vorthek fleet? Maybe nothing, said Nara, but it is better than giving up. She looked at her crew one more time. They were scared, but they trusted her. They had followed her to this distant system because they believed in their mission. Now she had to make a choice that might save them or might get them all killed. Send the signal, she ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. Tell anyone who hears it that we are trapped and need help. Lieutenant Zara's fingers moved quickly over her console. Signal sent, Commander. If anyone is listening, they will know we are here. Through the viewing screen, Nara watched more boarding pods launch from the Vorthek ships. The civilian vessels were being captured one by one. Soon it would be their turn. She closed her eyes and said a quiet prayer to the old gods of her people. They had always been a peaceful race, but today they needed a miracle. They needed someone brave enough to fight 15 warships to save a few strangers. The minutes passed slowly. The life support systems hummed quietly. The Vorthek ships moved closer to the station like predators closing in on their prey. Then, Lieutenant Zara looked up from her console with surprise on her face. Commander, she said, we are getting a response. Jake Collins was drinking his third cup of coffee when the Lucky Strike dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The old freighter shook and rattled as it always did when the jump engines shut down. Jake had been flying this route for 2 years, carrying supplies to the mining colonies in the Outer Rim. It was boring work, but it paid well and kept him away from the Earth Defense Force recruiters who still sent him messages. Another smooth landing, said Lisa Martinez from the co-pilot seat, her voice full of sarcasm. She was running system checks on her console, making sure the jump had not damaged anything important. One of these days this old bucket is going to fall apart in hyperspace. Jake smiled and took another sip of coffee. She has gotten us this far. Besides, I like ships with character. Lisa rolled her eyes. She had been Jake's co-pilot for 8 months, and she still thought he was crazy for buying such an old ship. But she had to admit the Lucky Strike was reliable, even if it was not pretty. Jake, Lisa said suddenly, her voice changing, I am picking up something strange on the communications array. Jake put down his coffee cup and looked at her console. What kind of strange? Multiple distress signals. Low frequency, high power, someone is in serious trouble. Lisa's fingers moved quickly over the controls, trying to clean up the signal. It is coming from the inner system, near the old mining station. Jake felt his stomach tighten. He had been a pilot in the Earth Defense Force for 6 years before he bought the Lucky Strike. He knew what distress signals meant. People were dying and they needed help. Can you translate it? He asked. Lisa nodded and connected the signal to the ship's computer. The Lucky Strike had a good translation system, better than most freighters. After a few seconds, text appeared on the screen. This is Commander Nara of the Zelani vessel Harmony's Edge. We are trapped by hostile forces near Kepler Station. 15 Vorthek warships have us surrounded. We have limited life support and no way to escape. Please help us. There are civilians. Here, families with children. Please, anyone who hears this message, we need help. Jake stared at the screen. The Vorthek were bad news. Everyone in this part of the galaxy knew about them. They were raiders who captured other species and sold them as slaves. Jake had never fought them personally, but he had heard stories from other pilots. How many ships did she say? Jake asked. 15 warships. Lisa was already scanning the inner system with the ship's sensors. Jake, look at this. The main screen showed a tactical display of the Kepler system. Near the old mining station, Lisa's sensors had found exactly what the distress signal described. 15 large ships arranged in a perfect circle with smaller vessels trapped inside. Those are definitely Vorthek ships, Lisa said. And there are at least 8 civilian vessels caught in the middle. Jake, we have to do something. Jake stared at the screen for a long moment. The Lucky Strike was a freighter, not a warship. It had minimal weapons and light armor. Against 15 Vorthek ships, it would last maybe 30 seconds. We should contact the authorities, he said finally. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Let them know what is happening here. The nearest council ships are weeks away, Lisa said. Those people will be dead or captured long before help arrives. Jake knew she was right. The Vorthek did not waste time. They would capture everyone they wanted and be gone within hours. By the time any official help arrived, the system would be empty except for debris. Jake, Lisa said quietly, remember what you told me when I first joined your crew? You said that sometimes the right thing to do is also the stupid thing to do. Jake remembered. He had been talking about why he left the defense force, why he preferred flying alone in the outer rim instead of following orders from generals who had never been in a real fight. But this was different. This was not about following orders or refusing them. This was about innocent people who were about to die. Scan the station, he said finally. I want to know everything about it. Lisa smiled and began working on her console. The station is old, probably 50 years or more. It was built for mining operations, but it looks like it has been abandoned for at least 10 years. The structure is still intact, but there is no power and no life support. Jake studied the tactical display. The Vorthek ships were positioned perfectly to prevent any escape, but they were also focused on the trapped vessels. They probably had not even noticed the lucky strike yet. What about weapons? Jake asked. Did the mining operation leave anything behind? Lisa ran deeper scans of the station. There are some mining charges still in the lower levels, probably used for breaking up asteroids. Jake, these charges are big enough to level a small city. An idea began forming in Jake's mind. It was a crazy idea, the kind that would get him court-martialed if he was still in the defense force, but he was not in the defense force anymore. He was just a freighter pilot who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or maybe the right place at the right time. Can you connect to the station's computer systems? He asked. Maybe. The station is old, but it should have basic systems still running on emergency power. Lisa began working on her console. Jake, what are you thinking? I'm thinking about character, Jake said. You said this old ship has character. Well, so do the people flying it. On the main screen, they could see the Vorthek ships beginning to move closer to their trapped prey. Boarding pods were launching from several of the warships, heading for the civilian vessels. Lisa, send a message to the Zilani ship. Tell them we are coming to help. Jake, we are one small freighter against 15 warships. What can we possibly do? Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile he used to get before a dangerous mission in the Defense Force. We are going to give them something they do not expect. What is that? A chance to underestimate us. Jake activated the ship's engines and pointed the lucky strike toward the inner system. Behind them, the stars began to move as the old freighter picked up speed. Ahead of them, 15 Vorthek warships waited like hungry wolves. On the bridge of the lead Vorthek ship, War Chief Vex was watching his boarding pods attached to the first civilian vessel when his scanner operator called out. War Chief, we have a new contact. One small ship approaching from the outer system. Vex looked at the tactical display with mild interest. Species? Human, War Chief. It appears to be a cargo vessel. Vex made a sound that was almost like laughter. Humans were new to space travel, barely a threat to anyone. Ignore it. One small human ship means nothing to us. The war chief turned his attention back to the capture operation. Soon he would have dozens of new slaves to sell at the markets on Vorthek Prime. Today was turning out to be very profitable. He had no idea that he was about to learn why underestimating humans was a very dangerous mistake. Jake kept the lucky strike on a steady course toward the Kepler station while Lisa worked at her console. The Vorthak ships looked bigger and more dangerous as they got closer. Jake had fought in many battles during his time with the Earth Defense Force, but never against odds this bad. I have a connection to the Zilani ship, Lisa said. Their communications are being jammed, but I can get through using the old military encryption codes. Jake nodded. The encryption protocols were something he had learned in the Defense Force. Most civilian ships did not have them, which was why the Vorthak jamming was so effective against normal communications. Patch me through, Jake said. A few seconds later, A voice came over the speakers. It was clearly alien, but the translation system made it easy to understand. "This is Commander Nara of the Harmony's Edge. Who is this?" "Commander, my name is Jake Collins. I am the captain of the human freighter Lucky Strike. We received your distress signal." There was a pause. "Captain Collins, you should leave this system immediately. There are 15 Vorthok warships here. Your small ship cannot help us." "Maybe not," Jake said, "but I have an idea." "Are you familiar with the mining station you are trapped near?" "We were here to study the ruins," Commander Nara replied. "The station has been abandoned for many years." "But the mining equipment is still there," Jake said, "including the charges they use to break up asteroids." "Lisa, send them the scam data." Lisa transmitted the information to the Zelani ship. After a few moments, Commander Nara spoke again. "Captain Collins, these mining charges are very powerful. But they are old and may not work properly." "That is where you come in," Jake said. "I need someone with technical knowledge to help me turn that station into a weapon." "Can your people do that?" Another pause. "Dr. Kale, our chief scientist, believes it is possible. But Captain, even if we could detonate the charges, the Vorthok ships are too far away. The explosion would not reach them." Jake smiled. "That is the second part of my plan. I'm going to get them to come closer." "How?" "By making them think I am more dangerous than I really am." Jake explained his idea to Commander Nara. The Lucky Strike would broadcast false signals to make it appear larger and more heavily armed than it actually was. The Vorthok, thinking they were facing a real threat, would send ships to investigate. If Jake could lure enough of them close to the station, the mining charges could take out several ships at once. "It is a very dangerous plan," Commander Nara said. "If the Vorthok discover the deception, they will destroy you immediately." "They are going to try to destroy me anyway," Jake replied. "At least this way we have a chance." "Captain Collins," came another voice over the communication system. "This is Dr. Kale. I have been studying the station's systems. The mining charges are connected to a central power grid. If we can get close enough to the station, we might be able to trigger them remotely." "How close?" Jake asked. "Very close. Someone would need to be inside the station itself." Jake looked at Lisa, who was monitoring the Vorthok fleet. "That someone would be me." "Lisa, can you get us to the station without being detected?" Lisa studied her console. "Maybe the debris field is thick around the station. If we go in slow and quiet, we might be able to reach the docking bay without being seen." "What about getting the Zelani crew to safety?" Jake asked. "There are emergency shelters in the lower levels of the station," Dr. Kale said. "They were built to protect workers during mining operations. If we can get there, we should be safe from the explosion." Jake thought about the plan. It was risky, but it might work. "Commander Nara, can you get your people to the station?" "Our engines are damaged, but we have thruster power. We can make it to the docking bay, but it will take time." "Then we better get started," Jake said. "Lisa, begin the false signal broadcasts. Make us look like a heavy cruiser." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her console. She activated every system on the Lucky Strike that could generate an energy signature. The ship's scanners would show much more power than a simple freighter should have. "Signal broadcasts are active," Lisa said. "To anyone watching, we should look like a military vessel." On the main screen, Jake could see the Vorthok fleet beginning to react. 3 of the warships were breaking formation and heading toward the Lucky Strike's position. "It is working," Jake said. "Commander Nara, start moving your people to the station now. Dr. Kale, I need you to prepare those mining charges. When I give the signal, we need to be ready to blow that station." "Understood, Captain Collins," Commander Nara replied. "And Captain, thank you for helping us. You do not know us, but you are risking your life to save strangers." Jake thought about his answer. During his time in the Defense Force, he had learned that the best soldiers were not the ones who followed orders without question. They were the ones who did what was right, even when it was dangerous. "That is what people do," Jake said simply. "They help each other. The communication channel closed, and Jake focused on flying the Lucky Strike through the debris field. Behind them, the three Vortex ships were getting closer. Their weapons were charging, and Jake knew they would open fire as soon as they were in range. "Lisa, how are those station systems coming along?" "I am connected to the main computer," Lisa said. "The mining charges are still functional, but the timing system is old. We will need to trigger them manually." "From inside the station?" "Yes, someone will need to be at the central control room when the charges detonate." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The person who triggered the charges would not have time to escape. It would be a one-way trip. "Maybe we can set a timer," he said. Lisa shook her head. "The system is too old and damaged. It has to be done manually." Jake looked at the tactical display. The Vortex ships were getting closer, and more were breaking formation to investigate. His plan was working, but it was also putting him in greater danger. "Jake," Lisa said quietly, "there might be another way." "What do you mean?" "I can trigger the charges from here using the ship's computer, but I will need to be connected to the station systems when it happens." Jake understood what she was saying. The Lucky Strike would need to be docked at the station when the charges exploded. Both of them would die in the blast. "There has to be another way," Jake said. Lisa looked at him with sad eyes. "Sometimes the right thing to do is also the stupid thing to do. You taught me that, remember?" Before Jake could answer, the first Vortex ship opened fire. Energy beams lit up the space around the Lucky Strike as Jake threw the ship into a hard turn. The battle had begun. Jake threw the Lucky Strike into a sharp turn as the first Vortex energy beam passed by their hull. The old freighter groaned and shook but held together. Jake had learned to fly like this during the war, when staying alive meant never flying in a straight line. "Three ships closing fast," Lisa called out from her station. "They are trying to box us in." "Not today," Jake said, pushing the engines to full power. The Lucky Strike shot forward into the debris field around Kepler Station. Weaving between chunks of broken metal and old mining equipment, the Vortex ships followed, but they were not used to this kind of flying. Their warships were built for open space battles, not for chasing small targets through obstacle courses. Jake watched on his screens as the first Vortex ship had to slow down to avoid hitting a large piece of debris. "Lisa, how are the Zolani doing?" "Commander Nara reports they have reached the station's outer docking bay. They are moving their people to the lower levels now." Lisa checked her console. "Dr. Kale says he needs 10 more minutes to prepare the mining charges." Jake nodded and turned the Lucky Strike toward the station's superstructure. The old mining platform was huge, with towers and platforms that stretched up into space like a metal forest. It was the perfect place for a game of hide and seek. "Jake, look out!" The second Vortex ship had found a clear shot. Energy beams lit up the space around the Lucky Strike, and one of them hit the ship's rear section. Alarms began ringing, and Jake could smell smoke. "Engines are down to 60%, Lisa reported. "Hull breach in cargo bay 2, but the emergency doors are holding." Jake dove the Lucky Strike under a massive mining platform, using the station's structure as cover. The Vortex ships were bigger and more powerful, but they could not follow him into the tight spaces between the station's towers. "This is getting too easy," Jake said, then immediately regretted it. In his experience, things always got harder right after you said they were easy. On the bridge of the lead Vortex ship, War Chief Thex was watching as hunters chased the small human vessel through the debris field. He was not happy. "Report," he growled to his weapons officer. "The human ship is fast and agile, War Chief. Our ships cannot get a clear shot in the debris field." "Then clear the debris field," Thex said. "Use the main weapons. Destroy everything." "War Chief, if we use the main weapons, we might damage the station. There could be valuable salvage inside." Thex made an angry sound. "I do not care about salvage. I want that human ship destroyed." But before he could give the order, his scanner operator called out, "War Chief, the human ship is broadcasting again. The energy signatures are getting stronger." Thex looked at his displays. The human ship was showing power levels that should not be possible for a freighter. Either it was not really a freighter, or the humans had better technology than anyone. Realized, all ships converge on the station, Dex ordered. I want that human ship surrounded. Jake watched on his screens as all 15 Vorthic ships began moving toward the station. His plan was working perfectly, maybe too perfectly. Lisa, are you seeing this? All Vorthok ships are converging on our position, Lisa confirmed. They are all going to be within the blast radius in about 5 minutes. How long until the charges? Are ready? Dr. Kale says 3 more minutes. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Vorthak ships were closing in from all directions, and the Lucky Strike was running out of places to hide. His engines were damaged, and the ship was taking more hits every time he had to break cover. Jake, we have a problem, Lisa said. The ship's computer is showing multiple system failures. I do not think we can maintain the false signals much longer. As if to prove her point, one of the ship's main consoles sparked and went dark. The Lucky Strike's energy signature immediately dropped on the tactical display. They are going to figure out we are just a freighter, Jake said. Maybe we can keep them busy for a few more minutes, Lisa said. I am rerouting power from life. Support to the signal generators? Jake felt the air in the cabin get thinner as the life support systems reduced power. Lisa, do not sacrifice yourself for this plan. Too late for that, Lisa said with a smile. We are all in this together. Now. The Lucky Strike came around a massive mining tower and found itself face to face with a Vorthak warship. The alien ship's weapons were already charging. Hold on, Jake shouted, throwing the ship into a desperate turn. The Vorthak weapons fired, and the Lucky Strike shook as energy beams passed close to the hull, but the turn was too sharp for the damaged ship. Something exploded in the engine room, and the Lucky Strike began spinning out of control. I have lost attitude control, Jake said, fighting with the controls. We are going to crash into the station. Wait, Lisa said, her voice excited. Jake, I think I can use this. If we crash into the docking bay where the Zolani ship is moored, I can connect directly to the station's computer systems. Jake looked at her like she was crazy. You want to crash on purpose? It is the only way to make sure the charges detonate. At the right time, Lisa said. I can trigger them manually from the station's control room. That is a one-way trip, Jake said. I know. Jake felt something hit the ship's hull. Another Vorthak ship had found them and was firing. The Lucky Strike was losing power fast and they were running out of options. Lisa, there has to be another way. There is no other way, Lisa said. Jake, Commander Nara is reporting that all her people are in the emergency shelters. Dr. Kale has the mining charges ready. All we need is someone to push the button. Jake looked at the tactical display. All 15 Vorthak ships were now within the blast radius. If the plan worked, they could destroy the entire fleet. But it would cost Lisa her life. I will not let you do this alone, Jake said. Jake, no. One of us has to survive to tell people what happened here. We are partners, Jake said. That means we do everything together. Lisa looked at him with tears in her eyes. You are an idiot, Jake Collins. I know, Jake said, but I am your idiot. The Lucky Strike hit the station's docking bay with a grinding crash. Emergency lights flashed and the ship's hull split open. But they were inside the station now, and Lisa's console was showing a direct connection to the mining charges. All systems connected, Lisa said. The charges are ready to detonate. Jake looked at the tactical display one more time. All 15 Vorthak ships were in position, surrounding the station like hungry wolves. In a few seconds, they would all be close enough to board the station and capture everyone inside. Do it, Jake said. Lisa's hand moved toward the detonation control. Jake, it has been an honor flying with you. Same here, Jake said. See you on the other side. Lisa pressed the button. The explosion started deep in the heart of Kepler Station. Dr. Kale had done his work well. The mining charges detonated in perfect sequence, each one triggering the next like a chain of thunder that shook the entire structure. Jake felt the station around him begin to tear apart. Metal screamed as it twisted and broke. The air filled with smoke and the sound of rushing gas as the hull breached in dozens of places. He had maybe 10 seconds before the main explosion reached their section. Lisa, we need to get out of here. He shouted over the noise, but Lisa was not listening. She was focused on her console, watching the tactical display as the explosion spread through the station. Jake, look! It is working. On the screen, Jake could see the Vorthak ships caught in the expanding blast. The first 3 ships, the ones that had been closest to the station, simply disappeared in the white light of the explosion. The shockwave hit the other ships like a giant hammer, tearing through their hulls and sending them spinning away from the station. 12 ships destroyed, Lisa said, her voice filled with amazement. 3 more are badly damaged and retreating. Jake grabbed Lisa's arm. We can celebrate later. Right now, we need to get to the escape pods. They ran through the corridors of the Lucky Strike as the ship shook and groaned around them. The escape pods were in the rear section, and Jake prayed. They were still functional after the crash. Behind them, the explosion was getting closer, turning the station into a ball of fire and twisted metal. There, Lisa pointed to the escape pod bay. The door was bent but still sealed. Jake forced the door open with his shoulder. Inside, 2 escape pods waited in their launch tubes. The pods were small, barely big enough for 1 person each, but they were designed to survive almost anything. You first, Jake said, helping Lisa into the nearest pod. Jake, hurry. Lisa could see the explosion getting closer through the station's corridors. The air was getting hot, and pieces of debris were flying everywhere. Jake climbed into the second pod and sealed the hatch. The automatic systems activated, and both pods launched from the dying station just as the main explosion reached them. Jake felt himself pressed back into his seat as the pod's emergency rockets fired, pushing them away from the blast at maximum speed. The explosion lit up the entire system like a new sun. Jake's pod was spinning, and he could not see anything through the small windows except fire and light. The pod's hull grew hot, and he could smell burning electronics. But the little craft held together, carrying him away from the destruction. When the light finally faded, Jake could see what remained of the battle. Kepler Station was gone, nothing left but an expanding cloud of debris and gas. Of the 15 Vorthak ships that had surrounded the station, only 3 remained. They were badly damaged and already jumping to hyperspace, running away from the scene of their defeat. Lisa, do you copy? Jake called into his pod's communication system. I am here, Jake. Lisa's voice was weak, but she was alive. My pod took some damage, but I am okay. Jake looked at his instruments. His pod was functional, but Lisa's was showing multiple system failures. Lisa, your life support is failing. I need to get you out of there. Jake, I can see the Zalani ship. They made it out of the station before the explosion. Jake followed her gaze and saw the Harmony's Edge moving slowly through the debris field. The ship looked damaged but spaceworthy. As he watched, smaller rescue shuttles launched from the Zalani vessel, heading toward the escape pods. This is Commander Nara, came a voice over the communication system. Captain Collins, Captain Martinez, we are coming to get you. The rescue took 20 minutes. Jake's pod was recovered first, and he was brought aboard the Harmony's Edge. The Zalani medical team checked him for injuries, but he was mostly just shaken up and had a few cuts from flying debris. Lisa's pod was in worse shape. When they brought her aboard, she was unconscious and her left arm was badly burned. The Zalani doctors worked on her immediately, using their advanced medical technology to stabilize her condition. Will she be okay? Jake asked Dr. Kale. She will recover, the Zalani doctor said. The burns are serious, but we can heal them. She was very lucky. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. We were all lucky today. Commander Nara approached him as he sat in the medical bay. Captain Collins, what you did today will not be forgotten. You saved not just my crew, but 8 civilian ships with hundreds of innocent people aboard. Jake looked out the medical bay window at the expanding debris field where Kepler Station used to be. I just did what anyone would do. No, Commander Nara said firmly. What you did was remarkable. You risked everything to save people you did not even know. That is not something anyone would do. That is something special. 2 days later, the Harmony's Edge reached the nearest space station. Lisa was walking around with her arm in a healing cast, and Jake was already planning their next cargo run. They were sitting in the station's bar, drinking something that tasted like coffee but was made from alien plants. "So what do we do now?" Lisa asked. "Same thing we always do," Jake said. "We find a cargo job and keep flying, just like that." "Just like that," Lisa smiled. "You know, Jake, I think the galaxy is going to be a different place now." "Why?" "Because now they know about us. They know what humans are capable of." Jake thought about that. It was true that their story would spread. Commander Nara had already sent a detailed report to the Galactic Council, recommending that humanity be considered for membership. Other species would hear about what happened at Kepler Station. "Maybe that is a good thing," Jake said. "Maybe it is time for humans to stop hiding in the outer rim. Maybe." 3 months later, Jake received a message from Earth. The Galactic Council had voted to offer humanity full membership in the galactic community. The report from Commander Nara had been the deciding factor. The Council was impressed not by human technology or military power, but by their willingness to help strangers in need. Jake and Lisa were invited to the ceremony on Earth where the treaty would be signed. They declined the invitation. They had cargo to deliver and did not like fancy ceremonies, but sometimes, when they were traveling through hyperspace on long flights, Jake would think about that day at Kepler Station. He would remember the feeling of seeing those 15 Vorthak ships and knowing that innocent people were about to die. He would remember making the choice to help, even when it seemed impossible, and he would smile, because he knew that somewhere in the galaxy other humans were making the same choice every day. They were helping strangers, fighting impossible odds, and doing what was right simply because it was right. The galaxy was indeed a different place now. It was a place where humans belonged, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they cared about others. That was enough. That was everything.